Hello, a very good afternoon and a warm welcome to the News International edition on this 24th day of February 2023. We are broadcasting to you live from our Vision Group headquarters here in Kampala, Uganda. I am Emma Akwero. Now let's start our news today from Nigeria, where just a day before Nigerians head to the polls, the chairman of Nigeria's Independent National Electoral Commission, Mahmood Yakubu, gives a briefing. The voter population of 93,469,000 voters is more than the total number of registered voters in all the other countries in the West African region put together. He says in explaining the complexity of the operation, he also gives assurance on safety. Our facilitators, our staff, voters, observers, the media, and even citizens will be safe during the election, he said.
Nigeria's presidential hopefuls appealed for non-violence at this weekend's elections and vowed to accept the result by signing a peace accord in Abuja. Mahmood Yakubu, chairman of Nigeria's Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, told journalists on Thursday that the commission had begun dispatching sensitive materials to Nigeria's state and that it had been working with the nation's security forces to provide maximum safety for staff and election materials.
There are no discrepancies. So please be assured and reassured that the system is robust. We are not deploying it for the first time in the history of elections in the country, even though it is the first time that we are deploying it for in a general election. But we have done so in 105 constituencies, and the results are still there to be viewed. It is the largest archives of election results in Nigeria.
The chairman of Nigeria's Independent National Electoral Commission assured that the commission was ready to hold the election on February 25th. Nigeria has been struggling to stem widespread violence and kidnappings perpetrated by armed gangs. Security problems have gotten worse in the runner-up to the polls, with several attacks and arson recorded on INEC offices. Officials said they had recorded over 50 attacks in all since the last elections in 2019.
There are no discrepancies. So please be assured and reassured that the system is robust. We are not deploying it for the first time in the history of elections in the country, even though it is the first time that we are deploying it for in a general election. But we have done so in 105 constituencies, and the results are still there to be viewed. It is the largest archives of election results in Nigeria.
Security problems have gotten worse in the runner-up to the polls, with several attacks and arson recorded on INEC offices. Officials said they had recorded over 50 attacks in all since the last elections in 2019.
In the build-up to the general election, several of our facilities were attacked by unknown assailants in various parts of the country. I am pleased that we have fully recovered from these attacks. We have been further assured that our facilities, staff, voters, observers, the media, and citizens will be safe during the election.
Nigeria is also dealing with shortages of cash and fuel, and experts say that this changes the dynamics of the polls.
As a result of recent developments in the economy, we have also had to consult with the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited on the fuel situation. As you all know, we require premium motor spirit, the PMS, or petrol, and automotive gas oil, the AGO, or simply gas, to power vehicles and boats for land and maritime transportation, as well as our generators during the election. We are pleased that the National Oil Company assured us that it will ensure availability of products for the polls.
The INEC said about 150,000 election observers were already in Nigeria, including delegates from the African Union, European Union, and the United States.
Likewise, the Central Bank of Nigeria has assured us that it will provide us with the necessary small amount of cash that we require from our budget to make payment for some critical service providers for the election. I must reiterate that the bulk of payment for works, goods, and services are still paid for by the Commission, by by electronic transfer.
Police said a senatorial candidate was killed early Thursday by gunmen in the southeast Enugu state on his way from a campaign event.
Now, something similar happened to one of the political parties, I think in Kano, where a candidate died last week. But he has since been buried, and the party has submitted the name of a fresh candidate to participate in the election. So the election in that constituency will continue with the name of the new candidate. There is no need to countermand the election.
Campaigning and the final push for votes was set to end Thursday.
Still in Nigeria, as millions head to the polls to elect a new president tomorrow, February 25th, Kano, Nigeria's second largest city and the economic heart of the country's Muslim north, could be key in deciding the winner. Shoe salesman Haruna Abubakar voted for President Muhammadu Buhari in 2015 and again in 2019. One of more than 1 million Nigerians who backed the former army chief in his stronghold of northern Kano State. After giving Buhari 2 chances to fix pressing issues like fighting jihadists and corruption, Abubakar says he has given up hope Buhari's ruling All Progressive Congress party can deliver, and he will cast his vote elsewhere.
When shoe salesman Haruna Abubakar voted for President Muhammadu Buhari in 2015 and again in 2019, he was one of more than 1 million Nigerians backing the former army chief in his stronghold of northern Kano State. Home to Nigeria's second largest city and the economic heart of the country's Muslim north, Kano was key to getting Buhari elected and re-elected 4 years later, mainly on his twin promises of fighting jihadists and corruption. After giving Buhari 2 chances, Abubakar said he has given up hope his ruling All Progressives Congress party can deliver and will cast his ballot elsewhere in Saturday's presidential election. We loved outgoing President Buhari like the blood flowing in our veins. We loved Buhari from our hearts. In fact, the masses have not loved any leader for whose love they laid down their lives like Buhari. But a lot of things happened which exposed his weakness, and since his weakness became manifested, the love in our minds waned. In fact, out of anger, I set on fire the cape embossed with Buhari's name I used to wear, burnt it and threw it away. Yes, I will vote, of course, I will vote. I will vote, but I have not made up my mind yet on who to vote for. I am still weighing the candidates. We have to listen to the plans each one of them has to ensure he is going to fulfill the promises he has made, so that he doesn't only make the pledges just to woo us, but which he will not implement. This is why I'm going to vote. Kano has long been a bastion for Buhari, an ethnic Fulani from nearby Katsina State. Now he's stepping down. The large block of voters who helped deliver his 2 election victories are up for grabs. More than 93 million Nigerians are registered to vote on February 25th, with their country struggling with widespread insecurity from jihadists, criminal gangs and separatists, double-digit inflation, unemployment and growing poverty.
Of course, I voted Buhari. In fact, I have even participated during the last election as a supervisor. In fact, I couldn't sleep that day because of Buhari. I love Buhari by then, you understand? Now, in fact, I have changed my mind, you understand? I have to change my mind. In fact, the government policies, they are poor, you understand? They are not favorable because people are suffering, people are dying because of hunger and starvation.
The redesigning of the Naira, which has thrown or plunged the country into serious economic crisis. And of course, the recent fuel crisis that has sent the prices of fuel skyrocketing uncontrollably. So these 2 things have compounded the economic problems of people. And those who were traditionally Buhari votes having a second thought, so to speak, though Buhari is no more contesting. But then I think that will affect the fortunes of either his party or whoever he is supporting openly.
Saturday's election has become an unprecedentedly competitive race among three frontrunners looking to succeed Buhari, and Kano is one of the major battlegrounds.
I think everybody is counting on Kano as a game changer or decider of what happens in politics, or who wins or who loses. So it becomes a very interesting place where people are always struggling to get the support, especially now that people are thinking Buhari is no more contesting. So those traditional votes, it is like being thrown in the open for anybody, hence the struggle for those votes.
To win the presidency, candidates must secure the most votes but also win 25% in two-thirds of Nigeria's 36 states and federal capital district. Nigeria is almost equally split between the mostly Muslim north and the predominantly Christian south, and voting is often along ethnic and religious lines. Turnout is traditionally higher in the north. That makes key northern states must-wins for candidates. While Lagos has the most registered voters at more than 7 million, Kano has 5.9 million, and Northwest Kaduna State has 4.3 million, together making up 11% of all voters. The state is especially complicated this time because it is also the bastion of two-time former Kano Governor Rabiu Kwankwaso, who is also a presidential candidate.
Now, away from Nigeria, let's head over now to Iraqi, where tombstones stretch as far as the eye can see across Iraqi's Wadi al-Salam Valley of Peace. The cemetery, often described as the world's biggest, which bears silent witnesses to life and death for over 14 centuries. It is said that more than 200 funerals take place in Najaf on a single day, says historian Hassan Isa al-Hakim. We have more.
Flowers, photographs and religious banners honor many of the millions buried in the ochre desert sands of the Valley of Peace, victims of war and disease, accidents and old age. Tears and prayers are the currency of daily life at this somber expanse of crypts, vaults and catacombs near the mausoleum of the revered Imam Ali, the founding figure of Shiite Islam. Digging a grave costs about $100, according to Naja Mazar Hamza, a manager of a funeral company. Expenses for building graves. Digging a grave costs 150,000 dinars, about 100 euros. As for tombstones, whether alabaster or Islamic or mosaic, they cost between 250,000 to 300,000 dinars, which is equal to 160 to 200 euros, depending on the model. For Shiites, who make up the religious majority in Iraq, being buried near Imam Ali is very important, said the Najaf city historian Hassan Isa al-Hakim. Our ancestors are buried here as a gesture of love for Imam Ali. The Shiites are accustomed to being buried in this holy land, as well as the Sunnis and Christians, because Imam Ali is the Imam of all. Sultans and soldiers, priests and prophets lie buried here, along with untold numbers of ordinary citizens. The use of the cemetery began after the burial of Imam Ali in this land. People used to bury their dead next to or near him. Then the cemetery began to expand to include a large number of people, Iraqis at first, before expanding to include people from Arab and Islamic countries and even Muslims from Europe. Since Ali died in 661 and was laid to rest nearby, people have stopped burying their dead in another cemetery in Najaf al-Thawiyah to put them to rest in Wadi al-Salam, he said. Many Iraqi Shiites chose the cemetery to lay to rest their loved ones. In the past, there weren't any statistics or state records. However, when there are big numbers and when economic or military crises worsen or during periods of unrest that result in large numbers of deaths, the numbers are usually recorded. Nevertheless, until today, it is said that more than 200 funerals take place in Najaf on a single day.
والإسلامية وحتى الأوروبية أن بعض المسلمين.
Some historians estimate that more than 6 million souls rest at the cemetery, mostly Iraqi but also Iranian and Pakistani Shiites. Iraq, in a submission to UNESCO, estimated its area at 917 hectares, the equivalent of more than 1,700 football fields, and called it the oldest and biggest cemetery in the world. There are no maps to guide visitors through the confusing labyrinth, which is also listed as the world's largest burial ground by the Guinness Book of World Records. Mourners who drive here sometimes cause traffic jam on the avenues that cut through the huge graveyard.
And the latest coming from the Russian-Ukraine war is that Ukraine and EU diplomats on Friday urged China to do more to press Russia to end the conflict during a presser after Beijing released a 12-point paper calling for a political settlement of the crisis. Zana Leshinska charged the affairs at the Ukrainian embassy, called on Beijing to leverage its stated neutrality and to talk to both sides. We have more.
China called Friday for urgent peace talks as it released its plan to end the war in Ukraine, but Western powers quickly rebuffed the proposals while warning against Beijing's closening ties with Moscow. The 12-point paper calling for a political statement of the crisis follows accusations from the West that China is considering arming Russia, a claim Beijing has dismissed as false. Timed to coincide with the one-year anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the paper calls for all parties to support Russia and Ukraine in working in the same direction and resuming direct dialogue as quickly as possible.
Should do everything in its power to stop the war and restore peace in Ukraine and urge Russia to withdraw its troops. And then, in my opinion, if it is neutrality, then China should talk to both sides, Russia and Ukraine. And now we see that Chinese side mostly talk to Russian, but not with Ukraine.
It also makes clear its position to not only the use of nuclear weapons, but the threat of deploying them after Russian President Vladimir Putin threatened to use Moscow's atomic arsenal in the conflict. But the document was immediately met by skepticism from Ukraine's allies, with NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg saying Beijing does not have much credibility because they have not been able to condemn the illegal invasion of Ukraine. George Toledo, the EU ambassador to China, said Beijing has a special responsibility as a permanent member of the UN Security Council to uphold peace.
It has a special responsibility to uphold and to make sure that the principles, values, and rules of the United Nations, especially when it comes to war and peace, are respected. Whether this is compatible with neutrality, I'm not sure. Depends on what neutrality means. But this is the special responsibility of China. China has to uphold and defend and promote these values that have been grossly violated, are being grossly violated by the aggressor in this war.
U.S. President Joe Biden's national security advisor said the war could end tomorrow if Russia stopped attacking Ukraine and withdrew its forces. And German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier said that while every constructive suggestion that brings us closer on the path to a just peace is highly welcome, whether global power China wants to play such a constructive role is still doubtful. At a press conference in Beijing, Ukrainian and EU diplomats urged China to do more press Russia to end the conflict. China has sought to position itself as a neutral party in the conflict while maintaining close ties with the strategic ally, Russia.
Still in Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky has attended a ceremony on the first anniversary of the invasion of Russia, awarding medals and honors to the families of fallen soldiers and wounded troops. We have videos of this.
While attending a ceremony on the first anniversary of the invasion of Russia, Zelensky awarded medals and honors to the families of fallen soldiers and wounded troops. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky vowed Friday to do everything to defeat Russia this year, with Kyiv announcing preparations for a counteroffensive on the first anniversary of Europe's largest conflict since World War II. Western allies underlined their unwavering backing for Kyiv, and Poland's Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki turned up in person in the Ukrainian capital to send a clear and measurable signal of further support. The United States ramped up sanctions on Russia, this time targeting the country's banks, military industry, and semiconductor access. Russia remained defiant, with former President Dmitry Medvedev insisting that his country was ready to push its offensive to the borders of Poland. A year ago to the day, Russian President Vladimir Putin stunned the world by sending troops across the border in a move seen as punishment for Kyiv's people to the west. The year-long war has devastated swaths of Ukraine, displaced millions, turned Russia into a pariah in the west, and according to Western sources, has caused more than 150,000 casualties on each side. The West has impounded increasingly stringent sanctions on Russia and boosted humanitarian aid and arms supplies for Ukraine, leading to warnings from Moscow of a dangerous escalation. As the war enters its second year, Zelensky pledged to do everything to defeat the invaders in the next months.
And finally, the United Nations has voted overwhelmingly to demand Russia to immediately and to unconditionally withdraw its troops from Ukraine, marking the one-year anniversary of the war, with a call for a just and lasting peace. In the UN General Assembly, 141 members voted in favor of the resolution, which affirms support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. 7 opposed it and 32 abstained, including China and India. The motion was backed by 141 nations, with 32 abstaining and 7, including Russia, voting against. In Vienna, a large number of delegates walked out during a Russian address at a parliamentary session of a European security body. The Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe walked out, and the UN vote came a day before the first anniversary of the invasion. The UN vote called for peace as soon as possible. The resolution reaffirmed support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, rejecting any Russian claims to the parts of the country it occupies. In September, MPs in Moscow voted to illegally annex 4 regions of Ukraine. The UN also demanded that the Russian Federation immediately, completely, and unconditionally withdraw all of its military forces from the territory of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders, and called for a cessation of hostilities. The measure is not legally binding but holds political weight. While the resolution was passed overwhelmingly by the majority of nations, there were some notable abstentions. China, India, Iran, and South Africa were among the 32 countries to abstain in the vote. The 7 countries who voted against were Russia, Belarus, North Korea, Eritrea, Mali, Nicaragua, and Syria. And that brings us to the end of our international news this week. We shall be back again on Monday at 4 p.m. For now, from me and the team behind the scenes, thank you for watching, and do have yourselves a splendid weekend.